All right. Right back at her. Part 4 of First Date Tier List with Courtney Ryan from a woman's perspective.
I think it's fair for me to
And I'll give you from a man's perspective as best as I can.
put concert in C and comedy show in B. Although we all know how humor can really make people feel more comfortable on a first date. This is a great way to connect and bond, but so could...
All right, since she just said that, yes. And I hadn't thought about this until just now, but yeah, going on a comedy date, especially if the people are funny, it might highlight how unfunny you are in a certain way. I never thought about that, but that would actually kind of potentially be difficult. Because I prefer to just be like lighthearted, flirty, have fun on a first date, and show the woman that, hey, I'm fun and I'm funny and I'm a good time. I'm going to joke around about all this stuff, and I have some wacky, weird perspectives on things, and that's awesome. And I'm going to display my confidence in myself, and she's going to think I'm funny and a great time.
a musical artist that you both really enjoy as well. So I'm going to put them both in B for now. Regardless, I think it's a great date, especially when you pair it with something else. Could really move up in the ranks.
Exactly. Pairing it with something else. Because, yeah, it could, just that, it just isn't enough. And it's a kind of a thing where you can leave. You can leave between acts. Or just show up for one of the later acts. I would suggest don't even go to a comedy show at all, for all the reasons you can't really talk, and it might show, especially if you're just not a fun or funny person. If you aren't good at making women laugh, especially in a dating scenario, you are going to probably not want to highlight how funny other people are and how potentially unfunny you are.
Next, we have the gym, which I've got to be honest, again, is a weird one for me. It's similar to a hike, in my opinion, but at least this one is in a public setting. Do you really want to be getting sweaty, out of breath, not able to really talk to each other?
That's my problem with hiking. Or even a concert. A concert can be incredibly hot. You're sweating. Sometimes you're standing. Movie theater, you're like sitting down. You're chill. You're comfortable.
I don't know. Maybe if you met at the gym. But I have to think, if you met at the gym, wouldn't it be nice to do something that's not at the gym? I don't know. I'm going to put it in D. I don't think it's as bad as in...
I'd put F. I think if you met at the gym, then a date to the gym just makes no sense on any level. It would be incredibly unromantic if you met at a gym to go on a date at a gym. Just truly ridiculous.
Inviting a girl over to your house, or a family reunion, or the movies, because at least you can talk to each other and you could have fun working out together. But even if you're both really into the gym, I think this one would be better to save for a couple dates in. Maybe you guys go to a workout class together, or you go to the gym together a few dates in, and that can be a really fun thing for you guys.
Yeah, it's kind of what you're describing is hanging out as a couple, doing something together. Not actually a date.
Guys to do. I love working out with my husband. It's a great way for us to bond. We're doing something healthy and productive and kind of killing two birds with one stone in a way. Having fun together, but also...
Here in Canada, we say getting two birds stoned at once.
Getting our workout in. But I don't know if I would love to do this on a first date. Actually, I know I would hate to do this on a first date again.
Yes.
Because if I'm just meeting someone, I want to put my best foot forward. I want to get ready. I want to wear a cute outfit. I want to be able to talk without being out of breath. But I'm going to put it in D just because it is similar to a hike for me. But at least it's in a public place where safety is not necessarily a concern. Maybe you go to the gym and then go get a protein shake and you talk for 2 hours while you're enjoying your protein shake. However, I will say you should shower pretty quickly after you work out. It's not great to sit in your sweat. So... yeah, D or F for me. I'm going to be generous and put it in D, but for me personally, I would not want to go to the gym for a first date. Could be F. It might move down to F. Stay tuned. Next up, we have a drink date.
Potentially the lowest F imaginable. Yeah, I'd say low F, lowest possible. Just insane.
I'm thinking a bar, a winery, some sort of thing where the date is centered around getting drinks. Now, a lot of you who watch my channel probably already know where I stand on alcohol. I don't drink for many different reasons. It's very personal for me, but I know that most people do, so I will say this. If this is the route you're going to go for a first date, be responsible about it. Now, I would recommend being completely in control of yourself and able to think clearly on a first date. I think this can go downhill pretty quickly. So make sure that you're being responsible. You don't want to be the guy who gets sloppy drunk on the first date or ever. It's just not a good look.
Well, that's kind of the problem with the drink date. It's that a good date is going to last a long time. So you kind of end up drinking a lot. Like, you feel awkward not drinking. So you end up just keep on continuing to drink. If you're going to do this, order like a soda or something, a lemonade, something in between to kind of space it out. So you don't feel like awkward, like you're just not participating in the event. And yeah, it's very complicated in that sense. I remember going on a first date with somebody and it went really well, and she wanted we ended up going back to her apartment and we continued to drink, but you create this like all these other like obstacles, and it's hard to tell exactly what's going on, because it's like, all right, well, you took me back to your place, lady, and you're showing me your apartment, you're giving me a tour of the place, and you want to continue drinking. It's kind of given every signal that you want to like make out, hook up, and it's weird when that doesn't happen, when that's not actually her intention, because it's like every possible signal that that's what where it's leading, and then when it doesn't, it's just, you just feel like awkward.
I don't necessarily think having a lot of alcohol involved.
Whereas like not having alcohol involved, it like it adds a different like connotation, and it would be smoother without alcohol.
Leads to anything positive. Again, I know that I'm in the minority on the drinks because I don't drink at all.
I would say it really depends on the specifics of where you are and how the date can lead from point A to point B. And there's just so much different kinds of like social drinking. I would say if it's a couple of drinks, like maybe a couple of drinks at a bar or restaurant, then go and like have like a bonfire, couple of drinks, that might work. It's very tricky, right? Because it can work just fine and be totally fine. It's just, I don't know. It's not the easiest to navigate of a date. It's not one that I ever go for.
Well, I'm totally sober. So this, honestly, I would put drinks in F tier. I would personally never want to get drinks on a first date.
No, not F tier. I would say C tier. It can go really well. Like, it takes off a lot of the edge. Not really for me. Like, I never feel any inhibitions anyway. So them being lowered or erased doesn't really change anything, other than I'm just a little bit more giggly, I guess. I'll laugh more and be a little louder and maybe direct, but barely. I'm pretty much the same guy. Now if I get really trashed, that's a different story. Then I'm just problem with me is usually if I'm getting really drunk, it's because a night has gone on and on and on, and it's been a really extended period of drinking. But by then, I'm getting tired. So I'm prone to black out because just the tiredness hits me. There's the drunkenness, and then it combines with being tired, and it's just It gets real. It gets sleepy time. I get real tired. Becomes a problem. But outside of that, the person that I'm with, often their inhibitions and sort of barriers and stuff kind of fade away, and then it can lead to a really great date, a really good social interaction, a really good date. So I'd say C, but a lot of uncontrolled variables.
Because I don't drink. That's pretty obvious. I think going out to a meal and maybe getting a drink with your meal would be a much better option here, probably because you're going to be hungry. Like if you get off work and you meet up for drinks, aren't you hungry? Like I'd want to eat. Maybe you do drinks and appetizers, I don't know, but at that point you're kind of just doing a more informal meal type thing. So I'm going to put drinks only in C tier, just because a date that is centered around alcohol with no food involved could go south. And I
My
really
auto
wouldn't recommend
tracking
having any
on my
more than
webcam.
2 drinks.
Yes, good job. I agree. C tier. It can, so many times you can just have such a great time with somebody by drinking. Now you can also have a very bad time. Things can escalate quickly.
On a first date, just because you're trying to get to know this person and see if you're compatible, you should be in a sober state of mind while you do that. Right? Maybe I'm crazy, I don't know, but it wouldn't be something that I would want to do. I'm going to put it in C. Could be B for some people, but for me personally, I'm going to put it in C. And
also, when I'm drunk, I talk faster and I talk louder. I've actually been, the one time in my life I've been kicked out of a bar, it's because I was talking too loudly. I don't even know how that's possible. It was funny. It was a bar. I was there with coworkers, and there was hardly anybody else in the bar. There was maybe like 6 other people in the bar, and it's like a fair-sized bar. We're like off at the side playing pool, and my other like we're all being loud and joking, but we're kind of off to the side doing our own things. All of a sudden, I get kicked out for talking too loud. We're being too loud. They single me out and kick me out. I was amazed. I'm like, what? Like 2 bouncers come over, and I'm like, oh yeah, I'm going. Like, what? You're kicking me out? All right, guys, we'll see you later. Like, I don't know. It was so strange, but yeah, volume. And that also, like, you feel the necessity to talk louder in a bar setting because there's so much, they're blasting loud music, so you like being somebody with that doesn't have the greatest hearing. I struggle to hear people in bars. Like, I got to be like leaning in typically, or like very close to the person I'm talking to. And so I find it to be like the polite and kind thing to talk loudly. But the problem is my default talking is very loud to begin with. So it just escalates to this booming and like loud voice. Because I can't, like I said, I feel like the greatest thing is, particularly on a first date, the greatest tool at my disposal. Because I want to have a great first date, even if it's somebody that immediately I can tell this isn't someone I want to be in a relationship with. I'm never going to go on another date with them. I'm never going to see the person after this date we're on. I still want them to have a good time. I still want to have to be a good date. Maybe they got a friend who's a little less kooky, maybe I just want to have a good time as well. So part of that is I want the person to laugh. I want them to enjoy what I'm saying to them. And I want them to be able to hear what I'm saying to them. And it's literally the one time where it was a problem. Hilariously. I got kicked out of a bar once for talking too loud.
For all the girls who say that coffee is a low effort date, I don't see how coffee is any more low effort than just going out for drinks. So, next we have a
I mean, I guess my voice was so loud that they just assumed that I was just screaming everything that I was saying. So it's kind of reasonable to kick somebody out for that if you just assume that they're just shouting like constantly in everything they say. But that's not what I was doing. What they did not realize is I get much louder than what I even was.
Amusement parks, which sounds fun in theory, but I think that a lot could go wrong. It can be pretty expensive to get in depending on where you're going. You know, if you're going to Kings Island, Cedar Point, Disney, I don't know.
Cedar Point.
So right off the bat, you're paying a ton of money to get into this place. And then if you're not really into each other or hitting it off.
Now I'm going to tell a story. I went to Cedar Point one time, and this was one of the most frustrating stories. So I went there with some of my cousins, and immediately we got a map. And Cedar Point's an amusement park in Ohio. We get a map. And I'm like, we need to plan out every coaster that we're going to so then we can create a path. A zigzag here, zig there, so we can hit all the rides we want to go on and kind of do like a big circle around the park. My cousin, the idiot, I love you, but man, you made me mad this day. He refused. He's like, no, we don't need to do that. And I'm like, oh my God, we absolutely do. This park is enormous. We're going to die from that level of walking. We need to do this. He absolutely refused. I tried to do it. I'm like, well, I think we should go here, 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 and here. So I was like trying to lead the charge. But he would like every so often like pull out the map and say, oh, I want to go on that. And it would be literally at the other side of the park. So like a 10, 15 minute walk. Just to like go here, and then you look at it again and want to go here. So you 15-minute walk back this other way. So it's like quadrupled the amount of walking. Like my thighs were chafed. My feet were in more pain, like calloused, horribly, miserably in pain. Just one of the most physically painful experiences on a like aching, other than like direct like I've had worse headaches, worse when I got my wisdom teeth out. That was a horrible, awful experience. So it wasn't like the sharpest pain, but an extended, unnecessary sort of pain. My feet have never hurt that much, and I was so mad because I'm like, I told you this would happen. I told you we need to come up with a plan. I told you throughout the day, hey, we just zigzagged across the park. We just burnt like 45 minutes of time for no reason when we didn't need to. And it happened several times. Oh, I want to go on this. Well, that's way across the park. We're going to have to, like, walk quite a distance to get there. Like, to walk from one side of Cedar Point to the other could take, like, a half hour. Like, if you've ever been to Canada's Wonderland, it is, like, way more condensed. You could walk, do a circuit around Canada's Wonderland like 3-4 times. It would equal one circuit around Cedar Point, because Cedar Point's like this island. The coasters are spaced apart pretty well. Like, it's just an insane amount of walking, and that would be awkward to go on a first date, because if someone was equally stubborn and just wouldn't listen to me, you could easily be in that same level of physical pain.
You're stuck all day with this person, and you're stuck waiting in lines. Waiting in lines is awful enough when you're with someone that you like. Imagine being with someone that you don't like that much. That's tough. But if you met this person beforehand and you already sort of hit it off, maybe this could be a really fun thing for you guys to do. Maybe you're both really into amusement parks. Maybe it's like your passion in life. It could work out. I'm going to put it in C, because you're in a public setting, you're walking around together, you're having fun. I would maybe say something like a county fair might be a better option here than, say, Disneyland or Cedar Point. Actually, enormously
better. It's an entirely different experience, because these like big parks, they're just way too big. They're way too big. It becomes a huge problem, and the lines are way longer. So all the issues are just amplified. And whereas like a county fair, they just don't exist at all. Like, yeah, there's some lines at county fairs, right? But it ain't this. It pales in comparison.
Went to the fair in my county this year, and I could see how that could be a really fun first date. You could play games, you can get some snacks, you can walk around, see the animals. Like, that could be a cute thing to do. But I think an amusement park where you have to pay so much money to get in and then not know how it's going to go is risky. I could see it going either way. So I'm going to put it in C. Could go D tier, but I think there's more upside here than, say, a hike. But at least you're in a public setting where you're safe and you're able to talk, and this could end up being really, really fun. So we're going to go C. Next, we have another one that I think on its own could not go so well, but if you pair it with something else, could go really well, and that is shopping. I think sometimes if a girl says she wants to go shopping on a first date, it might mean that she wants you to buy her something. So that could be a red flag. But for example, if you guys went out to brunch and you're like, hey, I actually need to go run to this shopping place to grab something that you need. I don't know, maybe you're looking for a new pair of jeans and you're like, hey, I'm gonna run there after if you wanna join me. That could be cute. You're pairing it with something else. So on my first date with my husband, we actually got brunch, and then we ended up going to a coffee shop after. And then he also needed to run over to the shopping center to pick up a pair of jeans. So I went there with him and I helped him pick out a pair of jeans, and it was so much fun. But this was like after we had spent all day together. We were clearly very into each other. We were enjoying each other's company, and we kept extending the date. So
yeah, I would say a mall where there's actually stuff to do. You can stop and eat. It works fine. It's kind of a good date. I'd say B tier, maybe A. There's awkwardness, right? Because you're gonna see stuff that you want to buy, but maybe you don't got money to buy it at that time. Maybe you see something that, I don't know. There's just it's good. It's solid. No issues with it. But what she's saying there about you keep extending a date. Don't get down on yourself if you're on a first date or second and it doesn't extend like that, right? Like, that's a sign of a great first date, is you want to spend a bunch of time together. Ideally, a lot of times, like, the best first date you can have is going to result in you spending the night together. Because you just keep on extending it into the next day. But if that doesn't happen, that doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad date. And I don't want people to get down on themselves or have like the wrong expectations of a date. That's certainly a sign of a good date, but people legitimately might have stuff going on, whether they tell you that they are under some time constraint or not. It's better that, like, you got to understand that some people might have that time constraint. Maybe they work the next day and they actually like understand that they need to get a good sleep. And people out there, get a good sleep. I'm telling you, you do not want to not be alert on the road. If you work the next day, if you got to drive the next day, the next morning, you can prioritize that. Prioritize your safety. I remember, like, your odds of becoming deceased from driving is very high. Very high. It's one of the most dangerous things you will ever do in your life, is driving a car. So, prioritize sleep. But ideally, you want to plan a date where both of you have nothing going on that night at all, and nothing going on early the next morning. Just in case, it extends and extends. It doesn't even have to lead to you spending the night together. But also, a best case scenario can be you stay up late talking. You hang out, right? You hang out at one of your places or wherever. Like, it could be till like 1 a.m. because you're just having such a good time. You're getting to know each other. You're talking. You're learning about each other. You're vibing each other. It's going so well. and you just keep it up because you don't want it to end. And it doesn't have to lead to like sex or whatever. It doesn't even have to, and it can be a phenomenal date.
This was a fun little thing to sort of add on to our pre-existing.
And even if it's just one activity, you can still have that great time and have it kind of cut short, and it still be a phenomenal date. And ideally, you'll kind of like, in a perfect world, if that happens, you have this phenomenal first date, but it ends up being quite short. Hopefully, the second date, you'll both have more time and you can kind of extend that, because you'll want to get to know each other more. Typically, that's kind of what happens, but because of people's busy schedules, I'm sure it's tricky to make sure that happens.
Plans, but just doing shopping for a first date, I don't necessarily know. I don't know. I think
but extend it, right? Like, you would be better off when a first date goes well. You want to aim for a second date to occur in the following, I would say, anywhere from 4 or 5 days after the first date occurs. You want 2 weeks from when the first date occurred is kind of your window of when you want the second date to occur. Now, you'd be way better off waiting till 2 weeks later, and where you both have time to have a more extended date, than 4 days later and have a short amount of time. Based off your schedules. And you got to be flexible and understand that, hey, not everyone's going to have a super open schedule.
Most of the time when I hear about shopping on a first date, it's usually the girl wanting the guy to take her to buy her something. That's where I usually see shopping come into play, especially over on TikTok, where a girl's talking about how a guy took her shopping on a first date and got her a Cartier love bracelet. Like, crazy things. And it sort of gives sugar daddy energy.
Yeah.
So I don't necessarily think that I would recommend that. However, maybe you're going to Erewhon for the first date and picking some things out. And
what in the world is Erewhon? I've never heard of this.
Then sitting outside somewhere and eating, or having like a picnic. Maybe you go into Whole Foods and you get all these little things that you need to make a cute little picnic by the lake, and you tag it along with something else. In that case, I think it could be cute. But just in general, by itself, I'd probably put it in D. If you combine it with something, maybe I'd put it in C. I don't know. I had a good experience with it on my first date with my husband, but that's because we tagged it on to our already existing.
It's tricky. It depends on the mall. If the mall just has like a small food court and a couple of stores, pretty basic, like the local mall where I live, it wouldn't be great. There just isn't enough to do. There isn't enough variety of stores. It's mostly like clothing stores for women. It's not a stores you'd really want to go on a first date. So it's incredibly limited. There's like, I don't even know if there's still this little arcade, but it's like very crappy. There's just not any of that extra stuff to do. And like the food court has like an A&W, a New York Fries, a pizza place, a juice place, a boba tea or whatever, and like a Vietnamese place. Just not enough. It's not large enough to be like interesting, to have like things to talk about, that sort of people watching, things naturally happening around you that are interesting, the things that are going to kind of give you an edge on a date. They just don't really exist at the size of mall locally here. Huge malls though, like there's some of them have large arcades, some of them have movie theaters. I mean, the local mall here does have a movie theater, but at that point it's more of a movie date than anything. I don't know. It really depends on what you got and what you're into at the mall that you're going to.
Plans. But just going shopping for the first date, I would not put it in C. Again, where I rank this one would depend on the circumstances. If I'm just going shopping,
At TD, we want to show our appreciation for our
TD.
customers. That's why TD customers get
Lady
We're going
watering
to.
her plants.
if we're tagging it along, we'll put it in C. But
Has
if both
everything
people have
to-
good intentions, there's no red
That has everything to do with auto insurance.
flags here. We're not giving sugar daddy energy. I think this can be a fun little thing for you guys to do, especially if you go shopping and then again add something else on. Lastly, here we have a sporting event, which I really don't like sports, so I don't necessarily know that I would like to do this on a first date, but there are a lot of women who do like sports, and it can be a fun thing. You're sitting there watching a game, you have something to talk about. You could get food, you can talk, you can get to know each other while still having something to watch together. So
I'm not into sports either. I've never gone on a date to a sporting event, but I would. I would say there is a very specific vibe. Like, I've gone to sporting events, but I've never gone on a date to a sporting event. Now, like I said, I've gone to hockey games here in Canada. Hockey games. There's kind of like a specific vibe to it, and it is nice. You can literally talk to each other the entire time.
I'm going to put it in B tier. I think this could be solid.
Yeah,
Again, very
I'd put it
similar
in B
to a
tier.
concert.
Even though, like, because there's something to watch that's entertaining, something to kind of talk about. Even though I'm not really a sports guy, I'm gonna have something to talk about. It's pretty good.
Comedy show, something like that, where you have something to enjoy together. But the perk of the sporting event actually would be that you can talk during it and not be rude. Like, you can talk during a baseball game, you can talk during a basketball game, you can talk the person next to you's ear off. You can yell all you want and no one's going to be mad at you because it's probably pretty loud in there. But that is one negative. It could be very loud in there, it could be a little bit rowdy, and so you might not be able to have like a more in-depth, deep conversation. So I'm going to put it in B. Could be A, depending on you and the person, if you both really love sports. I have a friend who is obsessed with baseball, and she would love to go to a baseball game for a first date. She would probably put it in S tier. So again, the personality.
All right, I'm gonna be right back. I know this is absurd to do, but I will be right back in 1 minute. So you can click off. Skip ahead 1 minute if you want to. Sorry about that. So yeah, first date tier list from a woman's perspective. Got to do what you got to do sometimes.
Of the girl you're going on a date with definitely comes into play. But what I really wanted to do with this video was just offer a woman's perspective on some of these different things. Maybe give you some points of consideration that you hadn't thought of prior to this video. So this is where I'm ranking everything. S tier, we have a sort of informal, cute little restaurant for a meal. It's not so fancy, and a guided type thing. I'm not going to go through the whole thing because you just watched me put everything in its spot, but let me know if you agree or disagree down in the comments. Again, doesn't change my ranking because this is my ranking from a woman's perspective. This is what I think, and you can absolutely think whatever the heck you want to think. And of course, you want to keep in mind your personality and the person you're taking on a date. If they hate sports, well, then that would probably go in F. Oh, you know what I just thought of for shopping that could actually be really cute is like antique shopping. I love doing that. I think that would be a really cool first date, to look at old stuff together. And there is definitely nuance to all of these things. I'm sure some of you have gone to the movies for a first date, for example, that ended up turning out really well.
Exactly. I was hoping she would say that, because I feel like we all have. When you're early into dating, you think that a movie's going to be a good idea, and kind of pop culture and movies themselves, which it kind of makes sense, right? That the film industry would show movie dates in movies to get people going on dates to see movies. It's never thought about that, but that's totally the case. And but because in reality, it's a terrible first date. Terrible. No doubt about it.
Or maybe a family reunion. Maybe you invited this girl to a wedding for a first date, and now it's sort of in.
So I'm just going to pull this up. I'm going to just remove myself there. So this is her tier list. She's got a like eating and stuff and coffee as pretty high. Museum I disagree with. And like a concert and comedy show are very low. But sports, eating, simple. I'd place like walking a little higher. In movie, probably a tiny bit higher. But the gist, it's pretty much the same. And why I kind of wanted to make this video, why I thought it would be interesting, is that these are kind of things that people talk about. I think that if you really struggle with dating, which is kind of who I'm making videos for, or people who just find the topic interesting, who also people who just want to talk about dating in general, right? Because you have to understand, it's not just the people who struggle with dating who talk about dating. Like men who go on a lot of dates talk about these kind of things. What makes a good first date? What doesn't? Because it matters. Because they want a meaningful relationship. They don't just want a meaningful relationship, but they want to have an effective first date where they suss out major red flags, so they're not dealing with a total whack job of a person, which can happen. If you go on a movie date and you don't get to know somebody, and then say you hook up with them, and then all of a sudden you're in a relationship with somebody who you didn't really know anything about, and it turns out they're like super promiscuous, they're like some like cheating basically whore. You don't want that, right? Like, you don't want to rush into something and have somebody like have all these kinds of, you don't want to be in this very toxic relationship that you rushed into, but it's rushing into it, but also taking your time. So women often can misconstrue that. Just because, say you went on a movie date, and then your second date was just at one of your places, and then you also watch a movie by chance, and then all of a sudden you've gone on multiple dates and your feelings are growing, but you don't even know each other. You think you do. You think, oh, well, now all of a sudden we're on the third date. So there's all these implications with that. And it just progresses too quickly when it shouldn't. And people can pretty effectively, even without that being a factor, on a first date, oftentimes totally hide who they are. So if you add the element of inherently not getting to know each other on your first date and second date, then you're just setting yourself up to be in a relationship with somebody who you don't know who they are, and then from that point forward, they're hiding who they are from square one, but they don't even have to at the first little bit. Then you could be like on date 6, 7, 8 with somebody. You could be like a month into dating somebody, and they've barely had to put any effort into hiding who they are. Which I'm telling you, the crazy people you encounter in dating, you encounter some people where they're crazy, manifests itself immediately, but sometimes they hide it, right? And it shows up later on, and you're just setting yourself up to develop all these feelings for somebody, be in a relationship with them without having any idea of who they truly are. And you don't want that. That's terrible. So it's you're setting yourself up for awkwardness in the short term with something where there's too much going on and you can't really talk, in the short term and in the long term, potentially. It's just a bad idea, because it's going to be harder to get out of that relationship, because you now have to break up with somebody, and that's if they're ineffective at hiding their red flags, hiding how crazy they are. You're just setting yourself up for disaster. And yeah, like, you need to, it's not just that these people, like, say a guy who gets a lot of dates and gets relationships, there's this misconception out there that these guys, they just have money, they're tall, they're good looking, and that's why they're effective. No, it's because they think about these little details. They think about where they're asking this person to go on a date with, how that date might turn out, and how that might, like Courtney Ryan describes here, lead from one activity to the next, to the next. They've thought about these things. They understand how they work through and through. They understand how to transition from one event to the next, to the next, and guarantee that each one of those events goes fantastically. So it's not that these guys just won the genetic lottery or something, and they just don't have to put in any effort. It's actually that they're putting in more effort. They actually care about how a woman's having a good time, how they themselves are having a good time, and how that fun, that positive energy they have, how that's infectious, how that energy they give off, how the woman's going to vibe with that, and how they're going to determine things about that woman on the date that they're on. And like I said, the woman talks more than the man on the first date every time. So it's kind of your like duty as a man to affect the date in the ways that you can, right? Because that puts a lot on the shoulders of the women. So men, you should feel less pressure on a date, because you don't have to carry the conversation as much, which is like 90% of everything on a date is the conversation. Think about it. How else could attraction build? How else could you determine anything about each other? Whether you're compatible, what your interests are, what your goals are, what kind of person you'd be to date. Everything is determined through conversation. And don't you find it interesting that Courtney Ryan here, who is very open and honest, and what she's saying, like, if you had 1,000 women make a similar tier list, they're basically going to do similar stuff than this. Now, Courtney Ryan, she makes videos about dating, so she's thought about these things a little more. She's effective at dating. She knows what she's doing. So any tier list, most tier lists, they're going to trend this way. Obviously, you're going to get wild stuff like outliers, people who haven't really given much thought to dating. They're going to be like, oh, well, I went on a good date to a hiking once, S tier, nonsensical thinking like that. But overall, you're going to get a trend that's very much like this. Because for women, like this video that Courtney Ryan made is from a woman's perspective. And men would, from a woman's perspective, these dates where you're talking, where you're sitting and talking are the best. And also, from a men's perspective, you would get a similar thing. You'd get a similar ranking where the ones where you're just sitting and talking, getting coffee, eating, getting to know each other, it's going to also be very similar. If you start thinking about why that is, and you need to, like men out there, you need to understand that arbitrary things like how much money you got, it's meaningless. It's meaningless. How physically attractive you are, it's meaningless. We've talked about this on this channel. Women's attraction towards men is so top heavy that you have to understand that what that means. Women's physical attraction towards men is pretty small. It's like 90% of their attraction towards men is nothing physical at all. Otherwise, why wouldn't like gym be at the top? Why wouldn't hiking be at the top? Why wouldn't the physical stuff be at the top? Right? If women are so shallow, so just in the looks, then they would be at the top, right? But they're not shallow. They want to have a guy who's confident, who has goals that he works towards, who's positive, who's fun, who's a light energy. They want that for sure. That's the most important thing to them. And you got to understand that. And you got to kind of think about the date that you're going to go on and how it's going to be effective. Right? How that connection, that bond that you formed, even if it's like pre-first date bond, even if it's someone you barely know, you had like a conversation with somebody and it ended in you asking them out, and now you're going on a date, or maybe it's somebody from a dating app where you just don't have much information to go off of. You have to take that tiny bit of information you do have and make some assumptions. Say, hey, they're into this thing, so I can kind of see what kind of person they likely are, so they're probably into this as well. You should be able to find some kind of connection to stuff they like very rapidly. And also on the date, right? Like we talked about here, dates often go from one activity to the next to the next. So you need to be able to determine what that person's into. Now there's two ways you can do this. One is, say you meet on a dating app or wherever, look at their social media, figure out what they're into, do a little bit of research. Or alternatively, you're going to get to know them on the date. So set yourself up with something where you're eating, you're getting coffee as the first activity. Maybe have something planned for a second activity, have some options available, but also be open to learning about them. Figure out what else they might be into and think about that in the back of your mind as you're getting to know them. On that first date, oh, well, have you done this? They're into this. Maybe there's a thing locally nearby where they might be into it. And maybe it's a store they haven't checked out, a thing that they haven't done. And boom, all of a sudden you could be like, oh, well, we could go there right now. Boom. All of a sudden you found a new activity, a new path for the date to go on. Now, if that activity is something that's going to lead to not getting to know each other, going to like downgrade the date, that's kind of a problem. You'd probably want to like just stop by, make it a very short part of the date, and then move on to a third activity where you will continue to get to know each other. These are things you got to kind of think about. And I'm not saying obsess about them. Do not obsess about them, but you got to give them some kind of thought of like what the quality of date that you've gone on, that you've taken women on. How much have they enjoyed the dates that you've taken them on? Why would they enjoy it? Why wouldn't they? What makes a good date? What makes a bad date? And how are you going to ensure that the rest of your dates are going to be good dates?